Hey guys, this is Tashina from Logical Harmony, and today I'm going to be doing a comparison video. So a lot of people have asked me to compare the Beautyblender to the Real Technique sponge. I actually just bought this sponge about a week ago. This is my first time using it. And I use these two sponges just to see how they compare to one another. There is a big price difference between them, and a lot of people swear by the Beautyblender, and a lot of people swear by the Real Technique sponge. So I wanted to see what the hype was all about. So in this video that you're about to watch, what I did was apply my makeup half side with the Beautyblender and the other half with the Real Technique sponge, because I just wanted to see the difference in how they applied product and how it looked. So I used that on my foundation and my concealer. So if you want to see my comparison and my initial thoughts on the Real Technique sponge and how it compares to the Beautyblender, just keep watching. They're both dry right now because I wanted to see what the size was like dry and wet and what the texture is like. The Beautyblender feels a lot bouncier. The Real Technique sponge feels very dense and it feels very different. It does feel a lot more dense, a lot harder to squish, essentially. I feel like they're pretty similar in size. Obviously, the Real Technique sponge has this little shape down at the bottom, but the general shape at the top is the same. They're teardrops. And the Real Techniques has this slanted flat bottom, whereas the Beautyblender just has a domed bottom. So I'm not sure if the difference is so much the size and the shape versus the actual material, but I'm curious to find out. So I'm going to go get these both wet because I want to see how they expand, what the texture is like then, and then I will be using them to apply my foundation and my concealer today because I want to see how they apply and if there is actually a difference between the two. You guys know I am like a diehard Beautyblender person, so for me to put them to the test, we'll see how this goes. I'm very, very curious. So I just went and got them both wet. As you can see, they are both much larger now than they were before. The Beautyblender actually expanded a lot more in size than the Real Technique sponge. And I'm surprised by that because this Beautyblender is not brand new. This is one I've used for a few weeks, whereas the Real Technique sponge I just took out of the package. Usually I find with Beautyblenders, they expand a lot more in the beginning. So I expected this to be a lot bigger. The texture continues to feel much more dense on this side with the Real Techniques than with the Beautyblender. The Beautyblender just feels lighter. It feels airier. I did notice when I was getting them wet that I had to squeeze this one a lot more to get the excess water out of it. So just make sure you keep that in mind if you're going to be using this one. I, got them wet for the same amount of time period, but I did squeeze this a lot more. So let's give these a try. What I'm gonna do is first I'm gonna put on my primer and then I'm gonna put foundation, and I will use the Beautyblender on the left side of my face and the Real Technique sponge on the right side of my face. So I'm gonna kind of split it straight down the middle because I just do wanna see if there is a difference. And the primer that I'm going to use is the Jasmine Iris Oil Control Primer from Pacifica. I recently got this when I was in LA with Rianne and have been loving it ever since. It is a very, very nice primer. And it goes on pretty liquidy. I would say the consistency, it looks like it's a serum, but it feels like a silicone-based primer. So it just feels really nice rubbing it into your skin and very, very lightweight. For foundation, I'm going to use Too Faced Born This Way foundation, surprise, surprise, and I'm using the shade Warm Beige. So right now my face is a little lighter than the rest of my body, so I'm gonna be using this to even things out. And for the sake of this, I'm just gonna dot this in a few spots on my face and use the sponges to blend it out. I'm going to start with the Beautyblender first because it's what I know, it's what I've been using, so that side will just go a lot faster, and then I will use the Real Technique sponge. Okay, so this side is now done with the Beautyblender. As always, it's very bouncy. It applies my makeup very, very evenly, and I feel like it gives it a lot of coverage without looking cakey or settling into any pores or fine lines or, anything like that. It makes my skin look very, very even. Now I'm going to use the Real Technique sponge, and I'm going to try using both the pointed side as well as this side. I think this will come in more handy for the concealer, but give it a try. Initial first impressions are that it is definitely not as bouncy as the Beautyblender. It's kind of what I expected given the texture and how dense it feels. It just doesn't feel as light and airy when it's bouncing across your skin. Also, I'm not sure how well it's translating to you guys, but it definitely did not provide as much coverage as the Beauty Blender did with the same foundation. I can see redness here. I can see a lot more of my under eye circles here. I can see redness on my cheek. Try not to be super, super critical, but honestly, like in person, the difference between the two, it looks like I'm even wearing two different foundations. That's how differently they applied. So I can say that for me personally, I think the Beauty Blender is still going to be the winner. It just applied much more smoother and evenly and better coverage. So I'm thinking that means the Beauty Blender absorbed less product too. It looks like this absorbed a fair amount of product. It just kind of didn't blend. That's essentially it. I don't feel like it really blended. You know, I did like the dots of product on my face. I feel like it left the product where it was, whereas the Beauty Blender helps you just spread it as you're bouncing around. And this was kind of just like, okay, that's there, I'll leave that there. Okay, you're moving on. Like, I'm probably gonna go back over this side with the Beauty Blender, to be totally honest with you guys, because this is really bothering me. Like, all this and this. It looks like I'm wearing a light coverage foundation on this side of my face and a medium coverage foundation on this side of my face. So I hope that's coming across for you guys. I know a lot of people swear by the Real Techniques sponge, so I'm curious what your experience is with it. If you've tried it, definitely leave a comment below and let me know. And also if you have any tips on how to use it, maybe it's not as foolproof as the Beauty Blender. Maybe I'm supposed to be doing something different, but I just assumed it was the same, where you just grab it, wet it, and go. So I'd love to hear any of your tips for it. But for now, I will be sticking with the Beauty Blender. I'm gonna even this out. Yeah, I need to do this. And maybe it applies each foundation differently. It could be maybe it's not a good fit with Born This Way. For me, Born This Way is a pretty foolproof foundation because of the formula. So if it didn't work with Born This Way, that makes me worry about how it might work with some other more full coverage foundations, like ones by Cover FX that can be a little difficult to work with. So maybe this is just better for light coverage products. Maybe you'd be good with the serum foundation. Maybe I'll keep trying it. We'll see. I feel like I need to add more product now to balance this out. I already felt like I had put more than enough on, like more foundation than I usually would like to. Oh my God, that's so much better. So now that I have my foundation on both sides and even out, I'm going to apply concealer and see if it works any better with concealer than the Beauty Blender. I do want to try it with both, and I'm also curious just how it's gonna wear. So I'm gonna apply my normal concealer combination, which is Pacifica's Dreamlit Illuminating Under Eye Brightener in Dreamlight, and Pacifica's Transcendent Concentrated Correcting Concealer in Light. And I kind of just do alternating lines of each of these so I can blend them together. Okay, so again, I'm going to do the Beauty Blender on this side of my face. I gave my normal full coverage. I think it canceled out any darkness that was there and really brightened up the area. So I'm going to use the Real Techniques sponge on this half of my face. Oh God. So you guys can kind of see now, I think what I was talking about with the foundation, how it's not spreading the product. It's kind of, I guess smearing it might actually be a better word. And I think that's because it's just not very bouncy. Oh, this is awful. Let me try this side. Okay, that's better. Again, this side has way more coverage. I feel like this side is brighter. I don't know if you guys can see. So the Illuminating Under Eye Brightener is going to give a little bit of a glow. I frequently use it to highlight for that reason. This side, you can see that glow. This side, it is not there. And you can also see here, it's like it took the concealer off my face, like it smeared it around and then just took it away. Like, if you guys can see this, like right here is definitely darker than on this side. So again, I'm gonna go back in with more product than I usually wear and the Beauty Blender to even this out. So I feel like with concealer, it was the same issue as the foundation. It did not apply the product as well. I had more problem areas showing through it. I may as well have, you know, it's like I applied a very thin transparent concealer instead of one that is actually pretty full coverage and usually works very, very well to cover anything going on around my eyes. The fact that I had to go in with more product to me is a problem. I know a lot of people say that the Real Techniques sponge is better because it's cheaper than the Beauty Blender. For me, if I have to go in and be adding more product every time I use it, is that really worth it? Like for me, it's not. I'd rather spend more on the Beauty Blender up front and know I'm getting a much better quality application and not having to use as much of my products because Let's be real, this stuff is not cheap. I would rather buy the more expensive sponge and get more bang for my buck out of my foundation than buy the cheap sponge and have to use an extra pump of foundation every day. But again, if you guys have a different experience with the Real Techniques sponge, if you have any tips, just leave a comment down below because I do want to keep trying it. I do want to like it. Seems like so many people really enjoy it. Thanks for joining me today, guys. I hope that you liked this video. If you are a fan of the Beautyblender or the Real Techniques sponge, I would love to hear your thoughts on either one and why you like one more than the other or why you don't have a preference. Just whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to find out, so just leave a comment down below. For more updates on cruelty-free vegan beauty and lifestyle, make sure you subscribe to logicalharmony.net. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at logicalharmony. Have a good day.